And welcome back to a regularly scheduled release of Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. Apologies again for the late Monday release of that episode. But we are back here. We did Dynasty Buys on Monday. Go check that out if you guys missed it. We're back here Wednesday with Dynasty Sells. Players who we think are going to drop in value over the next couple weeks, months, even a year or so. But guys, we think you should get out of now before their value tanks too much that you won't be able to get back, which you could at this moment. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. Individually, I'm Nick Sparts, at Nick Sparts on Twitter. Got Dan Thury across the table from me.
At Thury BFF.
And to my left, anxiously awaiting a bed delivery, is Christopher Hopper.
At Hop BFF with 2 Ps. It's going to be another weird episode, just like Monday was. I might be in and out of here. I apologize ahead of time, guys. Life happens. We got to get content out to you guys to this. We're trying to work around it. So here we are. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for putting up with my bullshit.
And if you guys want to get...
It's tough, but we love you.
And if you want to get a great view of him running in and out of the screen over and over again, be sure to watch the episode on YouTube. It should be highly entertaining for the viewers at home.
Yeah, because I have to try to work around Dan, not trip over the pile of crap that's not in the camera shot, and get out the door before my phone starts ringing. Stops ringing.
So that's always a fun combo to see. So check us out on YouTube, Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. If you got any fun moments that you want to call out, please call out those timestamps in the comments, like the episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can find us on Instagram at BeerFueledFF, on Facebook, Beer Fueled Fantasy Football, and then we are announcing the Dynasty League. We go back to Monday's episode for the full breakdown, but it's going to be a super flex, tight end premium Dynasty League for you guys that are listening at home. If you want to get to it, please go ahead and email screenshots to beerfueledfantasy@gmail.com and send us a screenshot of one of the three following things: a screenshot of you subscribed to our YouTube channel, a screenshot of you subscribed on iTunes and leaving a review for us, and the last one would be a picture of you liking our Facebook page, and you already liked it. If you send us those, it'll be an entry each, so you can get up to 3 entries into the league, and we'll do a drawing probably middle of June and announce when the draft time is going to start at that time.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Shall we go on to some to beer preview?
Yeah. Yep.
And we got a new brewery out of Chicago, Illinois, Begyle Brewing Company. First time for them on the show. We actually hadn't even heard of them until I picked up this 6-pack, so it's a brand new one here in the Springfield, Illinois area. It is Hophazardly American-style IPA. It's a dual-hopped beer with both Simcoe and Citra hops, clocking in at 7%. We'll give you guys a full review once we get through the running back, same as we did with the Dynasty Buys episode. Anything else to add before we hit some Dynasty Sells?
Nope.
Hopper just wants to power through this.
Yep. It's been a rough one.
Dynasty Sells.
All right.
Did you just cut it short?
I didn't cut it short. I just didn't feel like adding more to that because I was trying to rush through that this morning, too.
I love it.
All right. Well, it definitely kind of was an awkward end. We may need to.
I've been fading them out, but on that one, I was just like,
fuck it.
I didn't. Yeah, I was trying to get drops done this morning in between what you guys witnessed on Monday's episode and we'll probably witness later this episode. And like I said, it's been rough.
All right, well, let's get into some Dynasty Sells. And just a reminder, we're going to do our best to always define terms before we start getting into this. These are players who we think that, as they're currently valued now, either very shortly or at a specific point in time, we think their value will drop. So we're recommending that if you can... this is not going to apply to every team, but if you're in a situation where you can sell them, you probably want to do it now to get full value on that name.
And as a forward, it does not mean that we hate the player that we're talking about, at least in most cases. It means that
some of these
we just see a tail off for one reason or another. It doesn't necessarily mean we're down on them. It doesn't mean we don't like that player. It just means that we think you can get the most value out of them now as opposed to later by flipping them.
Yeah, like their value may have reached a point where it may never get higher, so you might as well try to see what you can cash out on them.
100% agree with all that. These are all for my list of players, it's all players outside of one that I definitely like, and even the one, I have some just injury-related concerns that I'm not sure he'll return from. If you listen to Monday's episode, you may have an idea of who I'm talking about already.
We do.
Let's go ahead and kick off quarterbacks. Hopper, since we gave Dan the start of most of the Monday episode, you'll get the Wednesdays. Kick us off with Deshaun Watson.
Yep, Deshaun Watson. This is a guy that if you listened last week, you already heard my thoughts on. His value's through the roof. His redraft value is 309. I'm not sure what his dynasty value is, but it's outrageous. he's in line for regression. That's all there is to say about it. I don't think his value is ever going to be higher. I don't think the hype is ever going to be higher. In a small sample size, he put up a 9.3% touchdown percentage. That's higher than Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, or Tom Brady's career numbers, Manning being the highest of those at 5.7. He also put up an interception percentage of 3.9, though, which is a huge red flag. For comparison, Rex Grossman's 3.8, Jake Cutler 3.3, Blake Bortles 2.9 on their careers, so higher than both of them. He was actually trending to trail only DeShone Kizer in interceptions at the pace he was currently going. Sack percentage would have ranked 8th in the league, behind a kind of a porous Texas offensive line. And, even with some regression, he flashed enough to be solid to good. I don't think he's going to be a terrible NFL quarterback. I think he showed us enough to where he'll probably be a solid NFL quarterback, maybe back in QB1 towards even the mid-tier, probably as an upside. But right now, he's being taken as QB2 in a lot of places.
I think the latest I've seen him go in a startup recently was QB5. I've seen him go as QB1.
Yeah, and that is outrageously high. So if you're in a position where you can sell him, and you should be, because I think he should have been probably the third or fourth quarterback off in last year's draft in a lot of cases. I would move him now, because you're not going to get, unless you're extremely quarterback needy, you're not going to get a better value for him than you do now, because those numbers are not at all sustainable. And that's what people are going apeshit over.
Yep. I don't have anything to add. He was my call out on the mystery player episode. And I think generally, if you have a player where you've got questions on where they're going to project out to, and then their value is as high as Watson is, that's an obvious sell high candidate right there.
Yep.
All right, Dan, you have a similar type player.
Degree of difficulty. I don't even really like this as much, but there's some things that need to be mentioned here, and it's going to be Carson Wentz. No, I love Wentz. Everybody, I think most people out there love Wentz. They love the fact. I think he's got a good upside too. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in this league, but I think it's gotten a little outrageous. You guys guess what his Dynasty QB ranking is on Fantasy Pros? If you don't look at it, just
Two.
1.
Oh, it's 1?
1.
He's above Rodgers. He's above Wilson. He's above Cam Newton. He's above Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston, and Matthew Stafford. All quarterbacks that I would rank above Carson Wentz, because I tend to value consistency over just a one flash season, which is what he did. His rookie season was pretty, forgettable. 16 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, a 2.6 touchdown rating, and a 2.9 interception rating. Pretty fair from a rookie quarterback. But he jumped to a 7.5 touchdown rating last year,
and fell down to 1.6.
And fell down to 1.6 INT rating. That's the big thing here. The completion percentage went down. The yards were pretty matched up. He would have finished probably around 4,000 yards had he played out the last 3 games, probably 2, because you probably would have sat out week 17. It's just, when I went and I listened to the fantasy or the Roto-World Fantasy Football podcast, Matt Kelly had Mike Wright on. Mike Wright brought up the Deshaun Watson touchdown rate as his main regression candidate. He also brought up what quarterbacks tend to do after they post a 7+ touchdown rate and how much it drops. He mentioned Cam Newton's and Matt Ryan's MVP seasons when they were 7+, they dipped below 4. They went from 7.1, 7.3 to 3.8, 3.7, which is pretty below average. I think the average in most is 4?
4 to 4.5.
Yeah.
4 is about average. 4.5 is very good, and 5 is elite most of the time.
Yeah,
and then anything over that is just nuts.
It's just not them. Russell Wilson did the same thing after his 2015 season. So there is some potential, for regression here. I think a lot of us are going to recall for Wentz's numbers, at least his touchdown numbers, to come down, because it's just insane to try to even think that a guy can do even more than 5 after a 7.5%. The big call out here, though, is his ranking, though. I don't see how you can rank him above guys like Rodgers and Wilson, who have done it consistently, especially Rodgers. The dude's been a QB1 or 2. I think for every season he's been healthy in. And then I know with guys like Winston and Stafford and, Cam Newton, even though we started to fade on Cam Newton a little bit, they've done it. They've put it together. Well, one of us have. Sorry, Nick. They've been able to put it together consistently for years to come. That means you can get that consistency. I know for Dynasty, you're trying to project 2 to 3+ years out, but for quarterbacks, it's these guys can kind of tamper off, lose that value as one guy breaks out. He flies up the board. We see right now with Wentz and Watson, even Garoppolo, and Mahomes, where guys who haven't proved it enough are getting ranked above guys who have consistently proved it over the last 3 years. Now, his sell point's going to be tough. I get that. So,
All right.
sorry,
Yeah.
I know I didn't want to keep rambling on.
We got it.
So real quick, I completely agree. He only was a 12, 13 game sample size. It was a really
13.
good. It was a really good sample size, but for those 13 games, but that's still less than a full season. I want to see him do it again before I'm buying him in as a top 3 candidate. I agree that he should not be that high.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to add on is with the ACL tear, he was a top 5 rushing quarterback. So if he doesn't come back right into that also, that's something to keep concern on. As far as his efficiency numbers go, not overall, but efficiency-wise, he was a top 5 rushing quarterback.
Yeah, if they have him rush less, that hurts his upside as well. Similar note here, a guy who has a limited sample size and hasn't proved it. I got Jimmy Garoppolo, who's being ranked in some places as QB5 in Dynasty rankings with 7 games played. And he's not even that much of a great fantasy performer for those games. He's averaging 16.7 points over those 7 games, which last year would have put him good for 13th on a per game basis. His career, and that was just the 5 games last year. If you go out overall 7 starts, it's down to 16.35. He's 26, so he's already a little bit older too. His weapons in San Francisco aren't amazing by any stretch, so it's not like he's going to come into this just dynamite of an offense. So there's definitely some serious questions about Jimmy G that he should not be a top 6 dynasty asset for quarterback.
No, he's a guy that projects to me as solid. He is very accurate. He ranked number 1 in pressured completion percentage. He was 4th in average yards per attempt, 2nd in total quarterback rating, which is efficiency and clutch. And he has a good offensive line, even though he was also good under pressure. So he's a guy that's a very accurate passer that I think with more reps could develop. And I don't expect the drop-off for Jimmy G to be as sharp as it is for a Wentz or a Watson. But I do expect the ceiling is lower as well. So, to me, he's a solid maybe 8 to 12 potentially in Dynasty. So his value's not as inflated as some of the other guys to me, but he's still a guy that, like you mentioned, he is older. His fantasy production in a small 7-game sample size hasn't been fantastic, but it's not been terrible. There's room to grow there with repetitions. So it's just one of those things where I'm okay with it as a sell. I'm also okay with it as a hold if you're quarterback needy. But
Yeah, he's not a must sell, but he's
you could sell for more than he probably will be worth again. So by definition of the episode, yes.
He's also in a situation too where a lot of teams who have him, he's probably kind of a luxury to have on that team where they don't need him. That's not going to be for every team, but there's a lot of teams where he was probably grabbed as a waiver wire pickup or as a throw-in in a trade before he started starting there in San Francisco. So he may be in a situation where you're like, hey, I already have 2 really good quarterbacks that I can rely on. I don't need Jimmy Garoppolo to start for me ever. He projects to me as kind of a Matt Ryan-ish back-end QB1 consistently type player, not as a top 5. So if you can get that type of value, which would be, in terms of rookie picks, would be like a mid to late first, I would take that over Jimmy G.
Yeah,
I agree.
I would too.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to running backs. Dan, I'm going to actually let you kick this one off since you have one of your flexes on this one. Tell us why Le'Veon Bell's coming back up again.
Le'Veon Bell always comes back in sell segments. Again, this is going to be based on your team comp. If you're in a championship window right now, I wouldn't sell him. I wouldn't, because he's going to be pretty dominant this year. But just some reasons why, if you're not in a full-on championship window, if you're in a rebuild or even a retool, why this isn't a bad idea. He's had his worst yards per carry in his career since his rookie season at 4. He also had the most. He also set career highs in carries and receptions this year at 321 and 85 receptions, over 400 touches. Over the last 2 years, he projected out to be 582 carries with 160 catches. The volume has always been his biggest asset. He gets everything. Even with Antonio Brown there, he is the number 2, the number 2 receiving option in that offense. But he may not be on the team after this year. There's been bad blood between him and Pittsburgh dating back to 2 years ago, and he's trying to hold out. He thinks he's worth more than what teams are going to end up wanting to give him, and he may land into an offense that may not give him the type of production or volume that he would be able to get with with Pittsburgh. So combine that with the durability concerns, the fact that he's only played in one 16-game season over his career. Last year, you can say, well, he didn't play week 17, so that may hurt him with that. But he's been banged up. He's been hurt. He gets suspended. And the fact that the organization doesn't really seem to want him as their future running back it may be time to bow out if you're not in a championship window.
Yeah, if your window isn't 2018, he's, I think, an ideal sell piece. If you're not on a contending team, I would rather have a younger, similar priced asset like an Zeke Elliott, like a Saquon Barkley, like David Johnson, similar either players who are the same age or younger who are in that same tier, who I don't see as nearly as many question marks for going into 2019.
Yeah, I made a lot of the same points about Bell on last week, so I'm not really going to rehash a lot of that. It's the contract situation. It's the fact that his run efficiency has gotten worse, and even though he's only 26, I think he's going to overvalue himself, and I think he's going to end up in a bad situation. Not going to end up back in Pittsburgh. There's just too many question marks for Bell to where I don't want to.
Yeah. Now him more than any other player on this list is a do not sell him at a discount just to get out. It's a you just float him out there until you get an offer that's worth moving on from.
There's going to be teams, every team, or in every league, there's going to be teams that are going to want to try to pry and see what you view, and then you go from there. Don't sell low, obviously, on them, but yeah, that's my.
But yeah, if you have somebody who's kicking the tires on it, and you're like, hey, I'm not going for a championship here in 2018. I've got Le'Veon Bell. Let's see if I can wrangle another really nice running back that's a tier below and go get a first-round pick.
Yeah, completely agree.
All right. I'm going to take the next running back here since I also have a flex, and I'm going to talk about Jerick McKinnon, who, man, has his hype train gotten out of control. I don't know what it is about Kyle Shanahan, but...
He's like the beefed-up version of Joe Williams and Amir Abdullah.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I like Jerick McKinnon. I've got him in my...
Love him.
I got him in my redraft ranking as a mid to high running back too this upcoming season. I think he's going to be really, really good. Just the thing is, I've seen people starting to push him up in top 12 dynasty running back range, which is not at all where I want to see him. He comes in at 205 pounds. He's already 26 years old. We've never seen him carry a full workload successfully without getting banged up. And that he's still totally in the shot.
I love it.
I was under it.
Oh,
you were under the shot? Hey, Hopper, where'd you come from?
Hey, welcome.
So McKinnon is a type of player where I just think this is just purely a cash in on the hype train moment for him. I don't think there's any way that he lives up to the Twitter and Reddit hype I've seen for this guy. Like, I've seen people be like, I'd rather have Jerick McKinnon over Devonta Freeman. It's like, I'm not even the biggest Devonta Freeman fan, and I'm still taking Devonta Freeman.
No. We know about the athleticism of McKinnon, but he's going to be behind a very solid O-line. He's going to be featured in the Shanahan offense. This is not an indictment on McKinnon. It's just his values.
This guy's insane.
Yeah, this is the windows here. Like, if you want to hold McKinnon and you just ride it, I don't blame you. This could be a lot of fun. But if you're looking for a cash window, it is now.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get anything higher than this.
Yep.
So that's simply that. It was just a kind of a too obvious name that we have to throw out there, where this is similar to when Derrick Henry was popping at the end of last season because Murray got hurt and people were seeing him leaving in free agency and we were slamming the table to sell him then. Exact same situation with McKinnon now. If you want to cash out, it's now.
Yep.
All right. Hopper, we're going to start another YouTube comment war here. Go ahead and talk about CMC again.
Here we go. All right. So I want to preface this with, I do not hate Christian McCaffrey. I don't. I think that he's a very good receiver. I think that he's very good in space. I think that when he has been given the opportunity to run between the tackles, he's looked fine at it. I have some questions, though, about his durability. I know he's not been hurt, but because of his frame, which is a very real concern, as a 3-down back, his ability to bash between the tackles. And I think Carolina doesn't necessarily believe in it either. Otherwise, you don't bring in C.J. Anderson, or there's not the hype around Artis Payne before that. So I don't know that McCaffrey is ever going to be alone. Greg Olson's coming back. DJ Moore's there. It's going to hurt the amount of targets that McCaffrey gets. As they build an offense, is he going to be the focal point? I don't think he is going to be the focal point. He'll be a huge part of it, but I don't think he's going to get the same opportunity he had year one. I made this note last week. No running back has ever had multiple 110-plus target seasons, ever. Or at least since targets started being tracked in 97. There's only 13 guys that have had one, and of those, Reggie Bush and Darren Sproles are the only two that were role players that weren't bell cow backs, and that was in a New Orleans offense that threw all the time, and Cam Newton is never going to be Drew Brees, and as long as Cam Newton's at quarterback, they're never going to run that offense like New Orleans ran their offense. You're going to have...
I don't think any offense is going to run like New Orleans runs their offense. They're very unique.
No, they won't. So he has value, but I'm still convinced he's a plus what Danny Woodhead was in his prime, and that it's mostly going to be PPR, half PPR value. And other than that, I think that you have to it's a good time to cash in because of the volume he got his rookie season. People are going to look at those targets. People are going to look at what he did show between the tackles, and his value's sky high. And I think the YouTube debate actually solidifies that. There's a lot of people high on Christian McCaffrey right now, and I'm just saying that I think if you want to hold him, like you said with McKinnon, I do not blame you. But I think if you're going to cash in, this is a good time to do it, and that's weird to say about a second-year running back coming off of a good rookie season, but you look at the opportunity share, I don't think it's going to be there for him like that again.
Yeah, he's the type... I have him valued pretty highly, and I think slightly higher than you guys do. Like in redraft rankings, he's going to come in as a back-end round 2, top-end round 3 pick for me.
That's probably about where I'll have him, because
So a high
especially
2,
in half PPR format.
high running back 2.
Mostly what we do.
I got him in the same spot.
Yeah, so he's definitely a player I really like, and I think he's going to be, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a consistent running back 2 year in and year out, with the occasional running back 1 year if there's a few injuries to some big names. Just like he finished last year, he finished as a back end 1 with a couple injuries. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I think he is going to be pretty much year in and year out. I don't see that changing very much. So you're not going to hit a home run with Christian McCaffrey. So if that's what you're looking for, he's the wrong type of player. I think he's incredibly safe though.
You'll hit a couple doubles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to hit for average. He
So,
might
yeah.
win.
So he's a Joe Mauer of running backs.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is absolutely a Joe Mauer.
He's a
He's
Joe
paid to
Mauer
hit
running
home
back.
runs. He's paid to hit home runs, but he gets doubles and he gets a lot of singles and some doubles.
Yep. So he's going to be incredibly safe for you. It's a high price tag to pay for him. So if you get somebody who's really interested and views him as a possible home run type player and trying to go for a top 5 value out of him, absolutely make that sell. But I think if people are realistic about his value, which is kind of that back very, very low running back 1 through mid running back 2 range, where I think he really is going to sit, I think if that's where he's being valued in your league, I would not sell him, because I think that's just about right. All right. Dan, you had a second running back.
Yep. I picked Melvin Gordon. I call him the boom bust of running backs. Fairly inefficient. He has yet to surpass 4 yards per carry in his career.
Inefficient.
3.8 is his actual yards per carry. At 3.9 in the last 2 seasons and 3.5 his rookie season. He's ranked 11th in Dynasty positional rankings right now. I think that's probably about right, but I think in terms of playing with just casual players who may see the name, may see the opportunity, may actually view him as a lot higher, which is why I have him on this list. But just like Bell, Gordon could actually even see that number dip even lower with the emergence of some of these, second-year running backs like Fournette, Cook, Mixon if he breaks out, Cook if he can remain healthy, Kamara, Hunt, and guys like that. Then you have this year's rookie class, which was arguably on par, if not better, than last year's with Barkley, Geis, and Penny, getting that large target share along with guys like Royce Freeman and things like that who could take the next step up given their opportunity. It's just, I'm not sure if the team views him. I'm like, the team may view him as a long-term option, but he's not an efficient running back, and they may get pissed off if they keep giving him more and more touches. He sees his touches increase every year. He finally surpassed the 300 touch mark this past season as he set career highs in carries and receptions and targets. He had 84 targets last year. It's like, we called that, but that was a lot. Then you see the emergence of Austin Eckler. They did draft Justin Jackson, which we're high on. It was a low draft pick. Well, okay, fine. 2 of us are high on Nick. Who could take pass catching roles there? If he remains inefficient, he may not have the long-term value that you're looking for from a running back. And right now, I think he still has enough value where you can maybe try to cash in on him right now.
Yeah, this scares me ever so slightly. I'm a Melvin Gordon owner in Dynasty. And yeah, his efficiency numbers as a runner they're Lamar Miller-like, and that's not good. There's also concern for passing game regression because of Austin Eckler and because of Justin Jackson being in town. He saw a career high 83 targets last season. That was up from 57, but the yardage totals weren't much better. He's not efficient. He's a pure volume guy. He was 7th in snap share, but 3rd in carries, 7th in targets, 3rd in red zone touches, 7th in goal line carries. But the saving grace here that points more to O-line to me than Gordon is he did create for himself. 5th in evaded tackles, 22nd in juke rate, which isn't fantastic. It's not terrible, though. He's not a shifty back.
Nope.
7th in breakaway runs and 4th in yards created. And his stacked front carry rate was also 14th in the league, which is relatively high, but he saw a lot of stacked boxes. So to me, yes, the efficiency concerns are real, but there's some of that to me that sits on the offensive line. They'll have Forrest Lamp back, who I believe was hurt last year, who was their high round guard draft pick.
Yep.
And I don't remember for sure, but did they address the offensive line at all?
I don't think they did, but they'll get Forrest Lamp back, who did not play a snap as a rookie.
Well, yeah, which I think will help. He was a high round draft pick last season, so just something to counteract there with Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Yes, the efficiency numbers are terrible. The volume, anytime you have a volume guy that's not efficient, it's concerning. But when you look a little deeper into that, to what he actually created for himself, to me, if you got a guy whose efficiency numbers are that bad, but what they're creating for themselves shows up that good, that points to offensive line.
I mean, like, even look at it, just to go off of that. I mean, his yards per carry against stack fronts, even against a base front, 31st in the league at 1.6 and 50th in the league at 3.2. And then you see him get better, against a light front at 5.4, fifth in the league. So, yeah, so the offensive line gets better. He can do that. But now you're in year 4, and he still hasn't quite surpassed what people want from a bell cow type of back.
Well, and what sticks out to me, though, is that 4th in yards created.
Yes.
Because that's what he's making for himself without being blocked.
Well, and to also go in against him now, he just lost Henry, who is a very, very good blocking tight end.
Virgil Green is still a pretty good blocking tight end, though, so that concerns me less. I'm more concerned with the loss of Henry for the receiving game, which could bode well for Melvin Gordon, than I am in the blocking game. Because, yes, he's a great blocker, but Virgil Green is also he's a good blocker, so I don't worry so much about that.
But just like Lev Bell, it's just based on what your team make and what your window is right now. Obviously, championship team, you may want to hold on to him because you're not going to get the potential value in return. In a rebuild, though, he may not be a running back of the future because he may be, depends what they want to do with him.
And there
comes to
continues
their
to be
fifth-year option.
And there continues to be a lot of really good running back talent adding to the NFL over these last couple of years, and that may cause him to be either put into a worse role or find a new team where he doesn't have nearly as much value. The other thing I would bring up on Melvin Gordon, though, is kind of his anti-sell, is I've not seen nearly as much hype around him as he is generally in terms of rankings.
No, he flies under the radar.
I think he does too, so I'm not sure you can quite get the kind of haul you're looking for a guy who's currently ranked as a running back 1. Whereas a lot of other guys who are kind of because he's pretty similar in terms of rankings to guys like Cook. I think you can sell Cook for way more than you could sell Melvin Gordon right now.
Yeah, which would put him right there with Mixon also, where you could do the same thing.
Yep. So I personally think that his name may be low enough where he may end up being more of a hold. This is definitely, if you can sell him for full price or even a little bit of a cherry on top, I completely support this. My caution is you may not be able to find a buyer.
Yeah.
I get it.
All right, and one last one that for the running backs before we get into a beer review, Deonta Foreman, who I still see a lot of hype on, but I think people are finally starting to realize a little bit that Achilles injuries are kind of been a death sentence in the past for running backs. There has not been a major running back to ever come back and produce after an Achilles tear. And even players who come back after Achilles tears, it generally takes them 2 to 3 years before they can get back to where they were physically. And a lot of players don't even ever play again after an Achilles tear. It's a really, really nasty injury. This is like ACLs were 20 years ago. So it's a really tough thing for players to come back from. And he was a bigger back that relied on power and downfield speed to really make his game work. So this is kind of the antithesis to the Lamar Miller pick I had in the bye episode.
It is.
And it's because Deonta Foreman, I think, is still being hyped up, which drives down Miller's value, but I don't think Foreman is going to be able to produce at all in 2018. And after that, he's still going to be a bit of a question mark for me. So this would be if somebody still buys into to Deonta Foreman as possibly taking over that backfield, which I've seen a lot of people who still feel that way, I am completely on the opposite boat with an Achilles tear.
The only thing I'm not convinced of here is that you have the value to move him. I don't think you can get... You may be better off holding him and hoping that at some point he flashes something or that a hype takes off and you can get better ROI, because right now it's not going to be good.
So, I mean, what would you want to move him?
To get rid of him?
What I would want in return?
Yeah, like if somebody what would you want someone to offer as kind of the minimum for you to be like, yeah, I'll get him off my team for that?
Second round pick.
Yeah, late second rounder, probably.
Just even a late second?
Yeah, mid to late second, probably, yeah, for me.
Okay. So, yeah, I think you can get that in a lot of leagues.
I mean, if you look at his...
He didn't have a lot of draft stock put into him anyway.
He was a third rounder last year?
Was he? I mean, even then, though, maybe mid-second then. But with the Achilles tear, I'd just be looking for something. Like, let me recoup something.
Yeah, I mean, he still has enough hype that I think in a lot of leagues you could still pull a mid-second for him.
Yeah, he was a late third.
There you go.
Yeah, I knew the Texans spent at least a decent amount of capital on him. I was pretty sure it was day 2. So yeah, he's just a guy. I don't think there's a lot of discussion there, but we're firmly on the Achilles tears are bad things. So
yeah, Achilles tears aren't good
Yeah,
if you need your legs.
This isn't like an ACL where players just seem to come back now. Where there's still a lot of
Tommy John surgeries of
for pitching. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, people come back from Tommy John though. Everybody gets one. Oh, ACLs, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, like ACL. Yeah, I draw that
Yep.
comparison where it seems like at least one dynamic player gets them in their career and they just bounce back.
There's
fine.
There's one every year, at
right.
least to somebody that's high.
So yeah, that's enough on Foreman though, because that's a pretty straightforward one. Let's move on to a beer review.
Beer review.
All right, in case you've forgotten the last 20 minutes or so here, we had Hophazardly by Begyle Brewing out of Chicago, Illinois. It is an American IPA. What'd you guys think?
It's really solid. The flavor burst I got out of the first drink kind of threw me off. If you were watching on YouTube, you probably saw me make a little bit of a face there. It's because it's dual hopped with Simcoe and Citra, which means you're going to get florally, piney, and citrusy. And both things are super prominent, and they mix. And, normally when you have something like this, they don't mix on the nose. You'll get one and then you'll get the other. In this, you kind of get both at the same time, which is a very different and interesting take. I like it. I don't love it. So we could be friends, but I'm not going to date it.
It's very unique.
I'll text you back, but not much.
I'm not sure I've ever had a dual hopped IPA where you get both flavors at once.
Yeah,
it is very much a burst of you get both. You get the floral and the citra together, and then it fades off into dry.
Yeah, which normally it's one then the other.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. It's a real cool flavor though. I've never had anything quite like it. So if you're looking for something unique in the IPA game, this would definitely qualify as that. So if you're in the Chicago, Illinois area or anywhere that this Begyle distributes to, definitely go ahead and give them a check. This is something unique in the IPA game, which I don't think we generally get enough of. Dan, any other thoughts?
I think if I'm at a bar and I saw it, Brandon's got the information on there, I'd try it. I give it a taste. I don't know if I ordered it again. I think it's good. Just like I think Hopper made the perfect analogy for it. We can be friends,
So not a favorite, but solid.
It's a good IPA. It's just it doesn't stand out enough to me.
This is something I would like as a seasonal release, not a year round. Because it came around and be like, yeah, I haven't tasted that in a while. But if it was a year round, it'd be like, meh, and probably just gloss it over on the shelf all the time.
All right, and unfortunately, we don't know if it's year round or not. I'll have to look that up because we don't know a ton about Begyle because we just got them in the area. All right, let's hit some wide receivers.
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to hit them, but we can talk about them.
All right, Hopper. You got the biggest name on the list, so I'll start with you.
Yep, I'm going to go with Julio Jones. He is regressing, and yes, his rank has kind of reflected that over the last couple of years as him and AJ Green have kind of lost their billing as the hot top pair to guys like Odell Beckham and DeAndre Hopkins. But, his catch rate, yards, touchdowns, receptions per game, they're all down over the last 3 seasons, and they're trending that way. It's not like an outlier here or there. They're absolutely trending. Ridley was brought to town. While he's not a threat to top dog status, he is to target, and one of you guys is going to have to take over this for me.
All right. He's still being valued as a top 7 or 8 fantasy wide receiver, which puts him as a early to mid second startup value, which is still incredibly high. So I definitely agree with him as a sell, just strictly off of the fact that he's got a lot of name cachet to him. The touchdown rate has been an issue for him all but one season in the last 6 years. I'm expecting a lot of issues with him going forward, especially now that they've added Calvin Ridley. They still have Mohamed Sanu. Targets should be down slightly. He's just the type of player that I'm not that interested in owning now that he's getting up to 30 years old.
It's just one of those names where, like you see it, you get excited, and you realize that it's just not quite the same, like it used to be. It doesn't give you the same nostalgia value. I think he's giving you what?
It's like going back to an ex.
Yeah, he's.
It's like when you sleep with an ex and you realize it just wasn't quite as great as it was last time.
It was better in like 2012. It's not the same anymore.
Yeah, 37th in target separation, 40th in points per target, 29 years old. He's probably got 1 to 2 years left on his window, so sell him to a contender if you got him.
Yeah, and he's also the type of player too where I've got some serious question marks about him. I actually cashed out on him in my one share a few years ago, just because I thought he was going to be kind of a headache because that's kind of always been his
He's
game.
the high-end boom-bust receiver. I mean, you'll get the 300-yard games, the 250 plus 2 touchdown games, and then he'll follow that up with like 3 for 40.
Yep.
And he does, and like he gets the red zone targets. I think he was like 5th or 6th in red zone targets and end zone targets. But the 2 touchdowns last year? I mean, I think he's had three. So he's had double-digit touchdowns twice in his career?
Once.
So he had 11. Like he normally gets to 6th, 7th, 8th, which is fine as a high-end wide receiver too.
When you're putting up 1,400 yards, sure, but when you're only putting up 1,000 yards and 3 touchdowns, then it's an issue.
Yeah, and I'm right with you guys. On his name alone, you can get a lot for them. There are people that are starting to fade him. It's not just us, but I think his value has been really back and forth amongst his community, just because a lot of people are trying to see if they can even buy low on him now because of his name dropping enough.
But yeah, he's still definitely got a huge name in a lot of places, so I would definitely be trying to move him to a contender if you're in any sort of neutral or rebuild type situation.
Yeah.
The only other thing I was going to add too is he's a much better NFL player than fantasy player at this point.
Well, he's extremely important to the Falcons team.
All right, well we better move. We got 5 players to get through.
Not that difficult.
Dan, Josh Gordon.
So, hey, first note, cue the haters. There's a lot of Josh Gordon lovers out there. Tamp your story a little bit. It's a great feel-good story. I'm glad that he was able to turn his life around, or at least he's on the verge of turning his life around. He should be a decent role model, if not a good role model, for Antonio Callaway coming in, which may end up being his replacement next year because he's a restricted free agent after this season. My problem with him is trust. It's always been trust. He hasn't played a full season ever in his career. His breakout year came in 2013. That was 5 seasons ago. The year after that, his breakout, before he got suspended after 5 games, it was meh. He misses all of, I think, 2015. And then last year, all this hype comes back. He produces in 1 game, and then he kind of just tampered off. I get the Browns' offense was bad last year. It's made a huge turnaround this year, but it's a strong running back core with Duke Johnson, Carlos Hyde, and the newly drafted Nick Chubb. You get a pretty decent receiving core with newly brought in Jarvis Landry, who got paid as a top 5 receiver, who I think they're now moving him more to the outside more as well. Gordon's not going to play in the slot. That's not his role. But the quarterbacks that they have, Tyrod Taylor is not a high volume passer. We don't know what what Baker will be in terms of that. But just on his value alone, he's ranked in the top 20, back into the top 20 in Dynasty rankings. Some of them have him higher than Jarvis Landry. Some of them have him right around that same range. To me, it's just based on his hype alone. You can get probably a lot for him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, he's kind of the quintessential forever mystery player because it's like, when is he going to get popped again for a drug test?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not that interested in owning him in most places unless I could buy him for really cheap. And now that he's trending in the positive direction for his news for the last 7-8 months, his value's gotten higher, and I would be looking to cash out if I had him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree with everything you guys just said.
I know.
All right. This next one should be fun.
I don't need it to be fun. It's going to be, though.
All right. Cooper Kupp, I want to bring up as a potential sell
Boo
option.
this
This
man.
wouldn't have anything to do with your Brandon Cooks buy, would it?
It would have something to do with my Brandon Cooks buy. And that's because I expect that Brandon Cooks gets brought on as a long-term sign there in LA. So this is no knock on Kupp, but basically he's starting to get some pretty serious value. Finishes the number 2 rookie wide receiver last year in 2017.
People are starting to target him. I can attest to that.
Yes.
Because I own him in a lot of places.
I even kicked the tires on him a little bit a few weeks back. But breaking down some of the targets here, Cooks has never had less than 114 targets in a season. He averages closer to 125. Sammy Watkins had just 70 in 2017, and that's including multiple weeks where Robert Woods was out. Cooks is probably going to be well over 100 targets. I expect closer to that 115 total he's going to get. So that means that Woods and Kupp are likely losing targets. I expect both of them to trend down in the wrong direction, and Kupp's game is purely volume-based. So I think that's going to cap his upside and drive him back down into the wide receiver 3 category, which is fine, but I think his name is starting to get enough value where you can sell him for more than that.
Yeah, correlation's strong with this one. He does have a pretty good, well-documented rapport with Goff. He has a 104.4 QB rating when targeted. I think he fits Goff's game better than Cooks does, though, just based on the numbers I threw out on Monday with Goff's deep ball and his deep ball efficiency and accuracy and what Cooks is versus what Kupp is. Now, I do think that 96 targets is a little bit of a stretch again. I could definitely see some maybe a 10 to 20 target regression there, which does hurt him and probably does knock him down to what you're talking about. And like you said, it's not an indictment on Kupp, but you're bringing in a guy who's going to demand more targets than what Sammy Watkins did. And I still think all of this curves around to they don't want Gurley to touch the ball 350 times.
I think that's also true. But basically, this is just I think they brought Cooks in and spent a first on him because they have a plan.
I think they do too. They needed a deep threat.
Yep,
it's not Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp.
Yep, and they now have a full offseason to get him ready as opposed to Watkins having, 10 days or whatever?
Yeah.
So they're going to get Cooks fully involved in this passing game. They're going to make sure Goff is at least trying to get him the ball on a consistent basis. His target rate should be high enough that even though I agree Gurley's probably seeing less touches this year, I think Kupp and Woods probably see a drop, and I think of the two, Kupp was the one that you can sell for higher. So he is the one I want to try to flip based on that narrative.
Yep.
So this is me painting a story. If I'm wrong and Cooks is gone after 2018, which I think is nuts if that happens, then I'm going to look like a fool on this one, but I'm taking my shot.
See, for me is that Kupp, he's going to get his red zone target share. I mean, like he finished 8th in the league last year in red zone targets. Cooks isn't a red zone type of guy, so he's going to at least have the potential touchdown upside. If they want to give Gurley even less carries or less touches, he may see more of that. He's got that rapport with Goff that we've seen from last year. So I'm a big, I don't know, like he can turn into a sell now and then turn into a buy low at some point this season.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't know you want to get going.
All right.
I've got to.
Okay,
unfortunately.
On to tight ends, Hopper, you got two of them.
I'm just going to go with both. First off, Trey Burton. Hype train's just unreal. He's athletic. Shaheen actually had better speed, burst, and agility scores. He's also bigger and a better blocker. Peripheral numbers for Trey Burton have been good, but I think he's going to split work, and this is just a situation to me where the hype train is completely off the rails. It's way out of control.
Yeah, I mean, he was a mystery player of mine for a reason. There's a lot of questions on him. Unfortunately, he kind of comes into a back-end tight end 1 ranking just by default, but I think his value is getting higher than that in a lot of places.
Yeah, Ozzy Osbourne's driving this. It's a crazy train. And then my other one's Delaney Walker. This is just a complete inverse of what Dan said about Johnny Smith on Monday. It's a situational thing. He's going to be 34 going into the last year of his deal. If you can sell him to a Hunter Henry owner or somebody that needs a tight end, you do it because Johnny Smith is the heir apparent here. You don't know what Walker is going to be after this year. Again, he is 34. Productivity's still there, so he should still return some value, especially on a needed win now team. But long term, don't like it.
Yeah, the only way I'm not selling Walker is if I'm in a contending team this year and he's my tight end. If I'm in any sort of situation where I either have somebody already over him or I'm in a rebuild at all, I'm flipping him immediately.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Go ahead.
Gronk. So
dominant when he plays. He hasn't really been a model of health throughout his career. He's had one 16-game season that was back in 2011. That was the last time he had it. He's been a little bit more consistent with that health in the last 4 to 5 years. He had back-to-back 15-game seasons in 14 and 15, and he played in 14 games last year. But it's the outside noise that's starting to be a concern. It got to a point where he was considering retiring because he was going to be able to get paid enough to have a wrestling deal contract where he almost did that. There's also been noise. There's also been noise of him even being a movie action hero at some point. So he's got long-term answers. And he's done more than enough in the NFL for him to retire, and people will be like, I get it. You can move on. He's going to be 30 years old at some point this season, though for tight ends, it's not as much a concern. It's the Patriots' long-term effect. Brady and Belichick could be out within next year. At this point, he's still considered a high-end tight end, and he's considered a top 3 tight end in most dynasty rankings. If your championship window isn't now, and you're looking for a rebuild or even just a retool, he might be a top option to move on from.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think his value is down with the retirement rumblings. But if you are looking to cash out, this may be your last chance. I'd wait till in season.
Yes,
but this is your cash out window.
Yep.
All right, one last one. Evan Ingram, and this is strictly his hype's gone too high, and there's no way he gets that volume.
Target share, volume, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Sorry, that was exactly the note I had written down. Actually, was target share, volume, blah, blah, blah. That's not a rushing thing. That's actually what I had written down.
Yeah, 115 targets last year, and that's with Shepard injured, Marshall out, and no Odell Beckham. Beckham's healthy. Shepard coming into the season healthy. They added Saquon Barkley. He's not going to get 115 targets this year. He needs to improve his efficiency to match last year's numbers. He's also not even my favorite tight end out of that class last year. I still think Howard and Njoku are going to be the two long-term answers coming out of that tight end class. I still like Ingram a lot, but places him as the number one overall dynasty tight end. Cash out on that.
Yep.
All right, pour your 40 outs real quick. These are players who...
It's fitting.
Devontae Booker. Not that I had any investment in this at all, but Royce Freeman coming in kills his value.
Yeah. Oh, so quick before we go, pour for everybody else, these guys whose value is just tanked completely by the draft or free agency. So Devontae Booker being killed by Freeman. Dan?
I'll put Chris Carson. For the same reason with Devontae Booker, they spent a high they spent a first round draft pick in Rashad Penny, which threw I think some people off guard. There are some people out there who still believe in Chris Carson as a chance to be that back in this role. That was all but squashed when Penny was drafted.
Yep.
And then to keep that train rolling with the running backs who got crushed by this draft class, Samaje Perine coming in our last draft class.
He's not quite that yet.
One of the three of us was a big fan of him. Hopper coming into last season. The other two of us were not nearly as high. But now a guy we all like significantly more, Darius Geis, comes in. He will be the number one between the tackle back on that team. Perine is strictly a handcuff at this point. His value has just tanked.
Thank you for checking out the Beerfield Fantasy Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at BeerfieldFF. I'm trying to talk really fast so I sound like Dan. You can follow Nick on Twitter at Nick Sparts, Dan at 3BFF, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Like and subscribe at Beerfield Fantasy Football on all three of those. And did I miss anything? We got merch for sale, hats, shirts.
And then email beerfieldfantasy@gmail.com with your Dynasty League submissions. Remember, screenshot either subscribing and reviewing on iTunes, subscribing to YouTube, or liking us on Facebook. For each of your entries, you can enter up to 3 times.
Well, we will catch you next time on Beerfield Fantasy Football.
See ya.
Peace.